Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. Today we have the incredible Jenny Pearson with us on the podcast. So, Jenny, I love to start these episodes out with a powerful question because great questions bring great answers in our life, which lead to incredible breakthrough. Now, your daughter, Elise, was diagnosed with a very rare neurodegenerative condition called Alexander disease. Before we go into anything else about this, just explain to us a little bit, what is Alexander disease? Because I had never heard of it before.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Can we talk about how cool that intro was? That was
Sure.
awesome.
Yes,
That was
absolutely.
amazing. I've never done anything like this before. So I'm feeling like, wow, I'm into it. This is
All right,
awesome.
thanks.
So yeah, leukodystrophy. So super rare, not uncommon that people have not heard from it. I actually had never heard about it till almost 10 years ago. So leukodystrophy, it is a disease. It's a neurodegenerative disease that basically affects patients in the form of, it affects their ability to walk, to talk, to swallow. You think of like all the gross motor, the fine motor, all that kind of good stuff. Very, very rare. One of only a couple hundred people documented in the world to have a disease like this. So leukodystrophy is more of like a broad umbrella, which means a white disease of the brain, a white matter disease of the brain. There's several different types of leukodystrophy. Alexander disease is what my daughter has. So, a lot of things that people can relate to, like you think of like an ALS or a Parkinson's or an MS, you think of the way that those diseases affect the patient's bodies, and it gradually just strips away their ability to do all of the things that allow them to function as humans. So, yeah. That was a great diagnosis to receive, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. So
Yeah.
as that was diagnosed and as you've been living with this with your daughter Elise now for, you said, the past 10 years, what is the single most important lesson that you've learned through this process?
Hard, right? Like it's all so hard. And I think my answer probably would have varied year one after dealing with the diagnosis, year two, year three, so on. I could honestly say when I look back almost a decade to dealing with this, I think, it literally has changed every fiber of who I am as a human, as an employee, right? As a mom, as a friend, as a daughter. Like it has affected every single part of who I am. And I think, you can talk about kind of the grief in terms of like what I've lost out on, but what we choose to focus on in this family is what we've actually gained from it. And I think the single most thing I've learned is perspective. And one of my big mantras is, every day you wake up and you have a choice. All of us do. I don't care if you're battling stage 4 brain cancer, a form of leukodystrophy. And again, I get it, easier said than done, right? I'm also a big believer in feeling feelings, and like, you got to go with the lows, sometimes, but by and large for us, it's perspective. And you have a choice. Which side of the window do you want to look at? Do you want to look outside and see like the doom and the gloom? Or do you want to see how horrible your life is and why me and why her and why this and why that? Or do you want to take it as an opportunity, right? Like, you know what, in my mind, I mean, I believe truly that God has blessed us with her. I don't know why. I will one day, right? But I think that it's up to us to kind of channel that good energy and look for the good, that we choose to see every single day as part of having her. So.
Wow, what a beautiful perspective. I want to ask a few more questions about that. First, I have to just shout out the sponsor who makes this podcast possible, the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So for anybody who doesn't know, Jenny Pearson is the founder of Elise's Corner, a nonprofit advocating for Alexander disease and leukodystrophy research. Inspired by her daughter Elise, she champions medical advancements and cultivates a supportive community dedicated to finding a cure. It's something my mentor said to me, has said to me many times, and I've taken it to heart, and I hear you saying it, is there's a blessing in everything if you look for it, right? So if you look for the blessing, you're going to find it. How or what blessings have you seen from your daughter having dealing with this disease and your family going through this also?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think that could be an entire episode, right? Of things.
Good.
I will say, interestingly enough, shortly after her diagnosis, we were at an all-time low. I mean, you just think about it as a parent. You have a newly diagnosed, a child who had just turned 3, and you hear that if they make it 3 years, it will be a miracle. I mean, how do you really wake up and find good and blessings? But I'm a big believer that that sometimes when you were at your lowest, you are so vulnerable, you're so exposed, and that's when you see these amazing miracles that happen right before your eyes. In terms of the good, in terms of things that have happened and blessings that we've received with it, not every patient is as lucky as Elise, in the sense where she is doing tremendously well. She's doing amazingly well, and every day we celebrate her accomplishments, right? She's happy, she's healthy. I think sometimes when I look at just the stage of life and where she's at right now, she's a 12-year-old girl. She's about to be 13 years old. And I don't know if you know too many preteens or teenage girls, and they're not so happy. So, every day, Elise will wake up, and it's something so simple as, she'll look out the window, we live on a pond, and she'll see geese. And it's like the best thing that's ever happened. And it's so cool to be in her orbit, because she just radiates just innocence and joy and happiness and all the things that I think as we age and as we're exposed to life, you know what I mean? It kind of gets taken away from us. We become bitter. We became just kind of like, this is what we're going to wake up. This is what we're going to do. And I think just her spirit and just her love of everything in life, especially animals, I think it's kind of been a really cool reminder every single day of how lucky we are.
Absolutely. And that's the perspective thing that you had mentioned is so good. And it's something that we can lose sight of so quickly. You can lose sight of perspective so quickly in life. Yeah. And I was mentioning this to you before we started this episode. I was just in a self-loathing, self-pity kind of thing yesterday. And I ran into a friend of mine I haven't seen in a while, who has a medical condition, and his life is clearly difficult just in day-to-day life. And he was in such a good mood. And anytime I've ever seen him, he's in a good mood. He's always happy. He's always positive about life and just like excited to be doing whatever it is that he's doing. And I thought, man, it just gave me a perspective of like, Rob, get out of your own head. Like, stop being so stuck in your own nonsense, because there's so much good in life. And so when we have somebody who gives us that perspective, it helps us to pull us out of, being stuck in our own garbage. And I'm not quite sure what it is about going through really difficult things that gives you this positive perspective, right? But it seems like as you go through really difficult things, you've developed more of a positive perspective on life. You develop more of a sense of like, wow, everything really is beautiful. Everything really is good. But we got to find that good in what is going on. Well, so go ahead.
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think what life experience can do, and has done for me at least, and it sounds like, your friend and countless other people that I know, is that you get to filter through the crap. You realize what's important and what's not important. I mean, it's so much easier when you see right in front of you something so serious, to say, oh, well, none of the other stuff matters. Like, nothing else matters other than, eye on the prize, right? Like, I know my top 3 things that are most important to me in my life. Like, I'm not going to get sidelined. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as my family or my children are happy, healthy, relatively speaking, right, and well-adjusted, like, those are the only 3 things that matter to me in my entire life. So it's, it is funny. I remember pre-Elise's diagnosis thinking like that, like, how could people find joy? How could people be happy in this? They're some of the most positive people I've ever met. And it's really interesting. It's a really interesting blessing that I feel like we've received and get to live every day.
When did it start to shift for you from being like, oh no, and freaking out and thinking the worst, to it turning into something that you saw as a blessing? What was there a certain period during this journey that started to happen?
I think the first time that we actually found hope, so you think about a severe, just a life-changing diagnosis. I mean, a terminal diagnosis is what she received. So when Elise got diagnosed, we essentially, there was so little research, there was so little information about the disease that she was diagnosed with, that essentially we were given a sheet of paper with 3 sentences on it that said, basically, take her home to die, in a nutshell. There was no chemo, there was no radiation, there was no surgery, there was no place to go, to find the experts. There were no experts. There was nothing. So I think,
Wow.
I think that was absolutely the hardest thing that I could imagine going through. And I would never want to go through that again. And I never wish it for anyone else, which is why, we've done a considerable amount of work moving it forward so that there are places to go if and when someone's diagnosed. So I believe, to answer your question about when did it start to change, it was probably when we met a young neurologist. Her name's Dr. Waldman out at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, or CHOP. And she had seen a handful of leukodystrophy patients, again, the umbrella that is over Alexander disease. And we were lucky enough that a mutual friend knew her and reached out, and we scheduled a trip to go out there and to meet with her, and just sitting down with her. And first of all, you look at her and she's physically beautiful. She's incredibly relatable, and she's a mom. And at the time she just had her youngest son. And, so she was definitely, it was an interesting balance of, like, she was balancing mom mode, brilliant neurologist, and also wanting to help my child. And so when we met with her, her message was, Jenny, like, things in the medical community is happening so quickly. Just because there's not something today doesn't mean that there's not going to be something tomorrow. So, in lieu of, like, me being able to give you hope, like, we need to create the hope together. We need to create the hope together, and we need to work towards it, because everyone deserves it. And it's so interesting. I feel like from that day forward, not only was I all in, I mean, we joke all the time where we're like, we had no business talking about hope. There was no hope at all, but we believed in it. And we believed just in that cheerleading moment and just supporting each other and deciding between us, like, we're all in, like, we're all in. Like, I was all in from the perspective of, I was so desperate to save my child's life. And she was all in because, she was so passionate about helping a child like Elise, and now hundreds of others, that we just decided we're going to tackle it together. So I think that was the hope that really changed kind of my perspective with everything moving forward, my perspective with the disease, my perspective with parenting, my perspective towards literally everything in my life. And it was such a cool moment. Those moments, like, that you have, like, core memories, isn't that what they call them? But it's like, it's such a cool core memory that, gosh, I wish it could have been recorded, because I'd go back and I'd play it all the time. It changed my life. That meeting changed my life.
That's amazing. Because sometimes when I ask that question, people don't have an exact moment. They're like, well, it was a gradual thing that happened over time, right? It's amazing. You have, like, a core memory moment of,
Rob,
like, when things started to shift.
It hasn't looked pretty. I'm a big believer too. And I mentioned this before too, like, you have to feel the feelings, like, I'm a big believer in perspective, right? Like, you choose your perspective no matter what you're going through. But, like, that doesn't mean that you don't feel the feelings and get sucked into the darkness that really a terminal diagnosis means, so, granted, that was the moment, but I don't want to be misleading in the sense to say, like, I haven't had really crappy days or weeks since then, but overall, like, I always use that as a goal to get back to. And, that's my true north, like, we should all have a true north, and that's my true north. And we're not always going in the right direction, depending on, like, are we in the ICU with some issue? Like, what's going on, but that's always the goal, and we always get back to it. So
I love that. Yeah. It's something that, and that's the marker of a strong person, of strong faith, of being able to, like, redirect. Okay, we fell down. We're going to get back up. We're going to keep going. Because what other option do you have? And I think that's incredible too, hearing what you're saying. It sounded like a moment of, some people may have just given up in that moment of getting that diagnosis and being like, well, that's it. And just taking the diagnosis and what the doctor said and been like, well, fine, this is just the way that it is. But then your decision to not go
I
in
don't
that
blame
route.
them. It is hard.
Yeah.
It is exhausting, and to wake up and fight every day. I mean, you know, it's had real effects on my relationships too. You know, my marriage, you know, friendships, you know, it's been the right thing to do, to wake up and fight for me. But I don't fault people who say it's too much. It is too much. It is way too much. And now where I'm sitting in my seat, you know, 10 years into it, I don't think I would have the energy to do this all over again. I don't think I do. I always joke with my daughter. I say, like, I will fight for my children until the end of the earth. I will do anything. I will fight anyone, anything. There is nothing that you can give me that I will not fight for them. Now, if I get so much of a paper cut, like, I quit, Rob. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't have it in me. Like, send me off to sea. I'm done. Like, I can't do it. But
yeah, kids will do that to you. They give you that reason to fight and keep going.
Yeah.
What do you think? How did you have the strength over the past 10 years? If you don't think you would, if you had to go back and do it again, you wouldn't have the strength. But how did you find the strength? How did you find that reserve on a repeated, regular basis to keep going, keep striving, keep creating, you know, Elise's Corner? What do you think did that for you?
I think a couple things, right? You know, you have to look at friends. I am blessed with truly some of the best friends in the world who have gone along with my craziness over the years, and they show up. Like, they don't even ask questions. They're just like, okay, cool, what are we doing? Like, you know, they're all in. So they've been really, really supportive, almost to the point where they're not even friends. They're part of our family. Obviously, really strong family that supports me, supports my children. You know, I think what keeps me going. So the two things that keep me going, you know, I look to Elise, right? Elise is the obvious thing that you look at in something like this. She's still fighting. Why should I not still fight? Like, why should I not fight for Elise? You know, she wakes up every single day. I can't tell you the number of hospital visits, doctor visits, pokes, you know, therapies, all the things that we have thrown at that child. Like, she shows up and she doesn't complain. So I think that's the obvious answer for why I show up and why I do this. But I think, and this makes me emotional, so apologize. I think the thing that keeps me going more than anything is my Emerson. So my Emerson is my 10-year-old daughter. So she's Elise's little sister, and she's never known a world different than having a sick older sister. And I look at her and I look at, you know, as a parent, everything you do is building foundations for your kids and setting them up for success, whatever that looks like. I know Elise is good. Like, I know Elise is good because she's happy. You know, she's happy and she is what she is. I look at Emerson, though, and there's so much potential. And I want her to look at me and say, man, my mom, she fought so hard, not just for Elise, but she fought so hard for me too. And use as an example so that when she gets old enough, which actually, Rob, she's more incredible than any other human I've ever met. Like, she's hands down the most inspirational person I've ever met as a 10-year-old child. But what I want to set a good example, because I want her, when she goes out into this world, whatever it looks like, I want her to channel that same strength and to be able to change the world in even bigger ways than what we're doing with Elise. So that's why I do it. And I joke that I didn't have it, I wouldn't do it all over again. I would do it all over again every day, all day, every day, just to see how happy Elise is right now, how much change we've infiltrated in the community, and how good of a human Emerson is, and how much greater she'll continue to be as she gets older.
Incredible. I love that so much. And, you know, you mentioned about the friends in your circle, and it's so important to have really great people in your life and to cultivate those relationships and to show up for people, and they show up for you. And it's really hard to put into words how powerful that is. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to take a 60-second break to shout out the sponsor of the podcast, the Connected Leaders Academy. When we come back, we got to talk about ElisesCorner.com. I have to know about Elise's Corner, and other people need to know also, how do they support the cause? What do you do in Elise's Corner? How did you develop this and grow this throughout the years? We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So Jenny, ElisesCorner.com, when did you start to create this platform?
So we launched Elise's Corner, which is it's a registered 501c3. We launched it on Mother's Day in 2015. So it was maybe 6 months after Elise got diagnosed.
Okay. And wow, look
I have
at
my
this.
child bringing me coffee. Do you see that?
I'm jealous right now. Yeah.
Sick from home, child bringing me
incredible.
coffee.
So
I heard all the nice things I had to say about her. So she's like, sure, Mom, I'll do whatever.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And that was Emerson.
Emerson, yeah.
Was that Emerson? Yeah.
Yeah, that was Emerson.
How did you decide to go about creating it? What are you doing with Elise's Corner? How does that all play out?
Right. So it's shifted over the years. When Elise first got diagnosed, there was a need for a patient advocacy group to be established. Any big disease that you hear about, there is an associated patient advocacy group that's responsible for whether it be fundraising, community involvement, patient support, advocacy. There are groups that that support the disease as a whole. So recognizing that there was nothing that existed for Alexander disease at the time, that's where we decided to get involved. And again, with Dr. Waldman, and actually a good friend of mine, her name is Maria Kafalis. Her daughter has she passed sadly, another form of leukodystrophy. It was called metachromatic leukodystrophy. And she was just a champion. She was such a champion for leukodystrophy and really doing whatever she could. And I think the coolest thing about Maria to me, and what inspired me, was that she knew there was no hope for her child. She knew her child was too far gone to do anything to help her, but rather what she did is she doubled down and she did it to help all the other kids out there. And she's made huge changes in the world of MLD, which is metachromatic leukodystrophy. I was asked to go to a fundraiser in February of 2015, and it was Maria's fundraiser. It was called the Calliope Joy Foundation. It was the Cupcake Gala. And what they did is it was in Philadelphia. And if you've ever been to Philadelphia, Rittenhouse Square is an extremely fancy place down there. And they had football players. So Jim Kelly, who's a pretty famous football player, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, he was there, as well as several other football players. And they were launching footballs all over this hotel. I mean, just through these chandeliers. It was, I've never seen anything like it. So coming out of that event, I was so inspired because I was like, wow, this is so cool. It was huge. There was like hundreds and hundreds of people there. And it was just, the energy was really, really exciting. So, on the drive home, I was with my Elise's dad and my mom. And, my mom said, we should do something like that. We should just have like a small little like fundraiser. We should do something really small. And, when you do something like that, it's important to have a place to put the money. So we established a 501c3, which became Elise's Corner. And, it was really cool. We talk about these friends who have become like family. I was like, okay, we need to do this. We need to launch it by Mother's Day. We need to have the website up. We need to be ready to roll. I mean, they helped me and we did it. It was incredible. From a name to a tagline to like all the content, it was incredible. And it kind of took off from there. So really what we became super passionate about was raising money. Again, when there is nothing out there that exists, like you have to start fighting for something. So we had our first Elise's Corner event in November of 2015. And at that event, we introduced Dr. Waldman, who I mentioned earlier, she's a doctor who's super passionate about Alexander disease from Philadelphia. We introduced her to Dr. Albie Messing, who's a researcher who is researching I won't get into the gene or anything like that, but he was doing a lot of research on kind of what goes wrong in these patients. And he was doing kind of understanding better about like why it happens and kind of the source of why. So we introduced these two together in November of that year. And out of that meeting, they left and said, okay, we're a lot closer to something than either one of us thought. So that caused CHOP, Dr. Waldman at CHOP, to go back and structure an entire national history and outcomes measure trial, which in order to do a clinical trial, you have to understand kind of the makeup of patients, how they present, how they perform in like a variety of like, how do they swallow? How do they walk, talk, breathe, like all that kind of stuff, speech. It has happened so quickly and it feels almost unfair in a way that it's happened so quickly, but we're so incredibly lucky because we have the scientist side. We have Dr. Messing at the University of Wisconsin. We have Dr. Waldman at CHOP. And they are so passionate about Alexander disease, and it's only grown from there. So that's how it started. That's how, I think our first event, I skipped over that because I think kind of the meeting of these two brilliant minds has been one of the coolest things that I don't even think our community understands how cool it was watching these two meet and really understand what the other was doing and then form a plan that they didn't wait weeks, months, anything. Dr. Waldman went back that Monday after and said, okay, we need to go to the board. We need to form like an IRB. We need to get approval. We need to move like yesterday. So it was super cool. But that event that we had, that small spaghetti dinner that we were planning on having had one of the largest events that has ever taken place at the hotel where we had it, like over 500, close to 600 people. We raised close to $1 million in one night.
Man, that's incredible. And brought together those two doctors who needed to meet each other.
Yeah. Elise did it. Like, that's what's super cool, Rob. Like, Elise did it. Like, we're kind of being guided by Elise. Elise like brings goodness into like everything she touches. And it's all Elise. Like, she's done this. It's really cool.
Did you say only a couple of hundred people in the world have Leukodystrophies?
Well, no, not Alexander disease.
Alexander disease.
Documented, right? And it's kind of a function though too of, it's like social media is still, not everyone's tied into social media. Not everyone has access to doctors who even have the ability to diagnose these diseases. Some people don't want to be bothered, so, a couple hundred people more or less, but my gut tells me there's significantly more than that, but documented. Yeah, that's what it is.
Wow. That's very interesting. And so as these doctors come together, as you form Elise's Corner, how do you see that moving forwards? It seems like you also through this process have learned a heck of a lot. Like you have a very deep understanding and knowledge of this, of the disease and how to help and how to serve. How do you envision it moving forward throughout the years? How is it growing? How is it changing?
So let's pause and let's go back to like kind of, I have to close the loop on what happened of those two meeting because it's kind of the coolest thing that I've ever experienced. I always describe it, I live in Akron, Ohio, which is like, a decent sized community, but I think like what's happened in my world with my child involved considerably is so much bigger than what so many people around me could even understand. So basically with the science and the clinical support provided by Dr. Waldman, there was a clinical trial, the first ever clinical trial. So we helped facilitate with these two doctors with the money that we've been granting, working with Ionis, which is a biotech company, the first ever human clinical trial. So it's kind of cool. So now we've gone from 10 years ago when you get a sheet of paper that essentially has 3 sentences to now there's an online forum. There's a website you can go. There's this, there's that. oh, by the way, there's this clinical trial that's taking place as well. Like, again, it's a crappy disease that not everyone qualifies for from a clinical trial. But, when you think about a clinical trial and what that means, the idea of a clinical trial is you want to put the healthiest and ablest, I guess that's not a word, patients through it, because you're paving the way to make this drug available for all patients, regardless if they can walk, talk, whatever their status is. There's such a sacrifice that takes place in the patients that are in the clinical trial to pave the way to make it available for all patients. So that's currently underway right now, which is really, really cool. Really, really cool.
And what an inspiring thing to know that people, parents, families, children who have to deal with this in their lifetime will never have to see that letter with 3 sentences on it, because it's going to go into a different situation for them. It's going to be a different story for them and a different journey. That's really a beautiful thing too, that you're helping so many families.
Yeah, well, and it's I guess kind of my take is this is kind of a weird spot to be in the sense that, I know plenty of patients that don't get to benefit from the clinical trial. I'll be honest, I mean, and I don't know if it'll save Elise, right? I don't know if this drug will save Elise. But what is great is that, and what's important that we keep our eyes on is that kind of that moving forward. And that's, what about the newly diagnosed patients? What about the 3-year-olds that are diagnosed next year? What does that look like for them, right? Will they have access to a drug that could potentially, reduce any of the side effects, that my daughter, and I'm so lucky in the sense that Elise does not have a G-tube. She doesn't have a trach. She doesn't, she's able to walk, it's a weird crossover. And it's like, you think like, wow, how lucky, but like, you can't forget about those that know it's out there. And they also know that they don't qualify. I mean, it's heartbreaking. So that's why I feel like we need to continue to move forward. So a lot of what we do, in addition to help kind of like what's in front of us right now for a treatment, we also help support UNC, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They're looking at a lot of already FDA approved medications that might possibly help lessen the symptoms of patients. We're piloting several studies, through the University of Wisconsin that say, that's looking at kind of like certain proteins that exist in the patient's stomachs that might not make them able to breathe or to swallow or want to eat, looking to see like what else we can do. Obviously, eye on the prize is a cure, and I know, people will throw a couple of $1,000s at a gene therapy. That takes tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. And that's certainly what we stay focused on, but, we're working towards that journey together.
Kind of changing gears over to Elise and just like maybe her daily perspective and what is she like on a daily basis? A little bit about her. Yeah.
Well, she's a preteen girl. So she's very moody. Don't turn off her TV when she doesn't want you to. No, she doesn't like to. Yeah, she's just so funny. No, Elise has, we're really lucky because we have such an amazing like community of support. So she's got her best friend who lives next door. Her name's Anna. She has my daughter, Emerson. They're inseparable. They're together all day, every day. They function as like sister units. It's adorable. I love it. Any kind of animal. She loves horseback riding. She loves her scooter. She loves Legos. She loves watching shows. She's really into Dance Moms for a little bit. So that was huge. She loved Abby Lee Miller. She's, in a lot of ways, she's just kind of like a really happy sort of toddler in a way. So she's cool. She's very cool, very laid back. Like if she were here, she'd be in the background just waving, saying hi.
I love it. How has it changed you to go through this journey too? I would love to know the old Jenny beforehand to the Jenny now, and we talked about perspective going back to the beginning and how you see the blessings and things in life. How do you approach people now? How do you approach life differently? I'm just curious of like that transformation that you've gone through this journey.
I think I'll be completely honest, like without saying like it's almost like if you take a human and you shake them up, like my DNA is completely different. I mean, I know it's not, right? But like, I feel like my DNA is completely and totally different than what it was pre-diagnosis. So I look at like work-wise, right? Like, I think I was at a time in my life where career is really important to me, and building my career and moving up and moving on and all that. And I didn't even have a choice. Like, one day I walked in and it was like, boom, no more. You have to put that on the back burner. You have to essentially like care for your child. So I think like as much of an ego blow, and I don't think that's a bad thing to say, as that was like saying, you know, in a sense, like I can't focus that. I think really kind of coming back around, you know, where I put everything career-wise on the back burner, and now like cycling back to like where I am able to take on more. I think it's just made me a more understanding and kind of, it makes me think about things that I never would have known to think about before. So I think that's a really, really cool thing. I think from a friend perspective, I think the level of empathy that I have, I will tell you, for the people I care about, I will do absolutely anything and everything for, at any time. And I don't even care if it's worth it or not. Like, if these are people that show up and these are people who have supported me, there's nothing that's off the table. So, you know, I think whereas before it'd be like, ugh, I don't want to drive through the night to go do this, and feel like, no, I mean, if these are people that show up for me, I will show up for them. And I think obviously as a mother, I'm a happy mom. Like, I listened to you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. There were things like it would just bother me so much, and I'd be so uptight. And gosh, I've even heard people like where they're planning fun time for families. Like, no, like family is the most important thing in the world. Like, I couldn't tell you last time I yelled at my kids or punished or done anything like that. Like, I feel like, and I know that sounds kind of super simplistic and people are like, that's silly, but my whole approach to parenting is completely different. And I approach everything with like love and understanding. And, you know, kids could be challenging, but I think, you know, they've got patience with me when I'm having a bad day. And I typically have a lot of patience with them when they're having a bad day. So it's just that overall, like, that feeling of understanding.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, not being so concerned about what we're going to do next or what's going to happen next, but focus on, you know, the people in our lives and loving people the best that we can. Right.
Yeah.
That's the things that are really important. And that perspective change is much needed for the world as a whole. And I think it happens to each person individually in different ways. I know it's happened for me in a different way than it's happened for you, but I think we all have the opportunity to have, because God's speaking to all of us, we all have the opportunity to wake up to it and be like, okay, right, I have to remember this stuff that I think really matters doesn't really matter all that much. What I need to make sure I do is focus on the people in my life and the people that I can touch in my life and love those people better. And that's the thing I need to be able to do. And if I can do that well, then the other things are going to work out. And, you know, our world's crazy and life is busy, and the things get in the way. But like you kind of said earlier about like refocusing that perspective, like when you fall down, pick yourself back up and keep going. When you were working through this process with Elise, but also just in life in general, you're going to get distracted. You're going to get sidetracked, but refocusing yourself and bringing yourself back to what is really important in life. So
yeah, like
I love to hear that. That's so good.
Establishing your true north, right? What is your goal? Like, what is your true north? What is the thing you're working towards? And not every day is going to look pretty, but as long as you continue to work towards it, for me, you know, that's worked.
Yeah. Thank you so much, first of all, for being a part of the Unstuck movement. This has been a wonderful story, and I love what you're doing, and just sending blessings to you and your family. And if people want to help out or learn more, if maybe they want to donate or just get more information, can that all be done at elisescorner.com?
Yeah. Everything can be done through elisescorner.com. We're actually in the process of kind of redoing the website. We took a step back from advocacy for a couple years just because that wasn't my journey at the time. But we're back, and we are going to be unveiling a whole new website. But yes, still now you can go to elisescorner.com. It'll direct you where to donate and get additional information. Amazing.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for talking today, sharing your story with us, Elise's story with us. What a powerful story. What an inspiring journey. So I just really value your time. And is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off? Anything we didn't cover?
No, No, I think you hit it all. I mean, Cliff Notes, right? I feel like these are things books could be made out of. It's crazy, but no, I
So
really
where's the
appreciate.
book at?
Yeah, when I have time, I'll do that.
Right.
I'll
Cool.
get started.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you though. This is awesome, and I appreciate you including me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being a part of the Unstuck movement.